Oh, yeah. The NFL draft and rookies. Hell yeah.
Podcast off the rails already.
But there is not a chance in hell Justin Fields is finishing in the top 10.
There you know what, Mikey? Shut it.
He wants
Why
it.
not?
You don't want the smoke.
He's Calvin Johnson. He's Calvin
Oh,
Johnson.
good.
Oh,
God.
my
Yes,
God.
yes, and yes.
What are we gonna do with you?
It just, it adds a little extra flavor to the podcast.
I think you're disrespecting David Njoku.
Thank God
Yeah.
for Joe Flacco. That's all I can say. I'll help the owners. Don't draft Kadarius Toney.
I have to give the people what they want. I mean, come on. I'm going to milk it. I'm going to milk it for all it's worth.
I'll give you something to milk.
Let's rock and roll.
All right, MHA owners. It's July. It's 2024, and we're getting ready for another season of the Mile High Affiliates podcast. And we're here to get you ready for that 23rd season of the MHA Fantasy Football League. You know who I am by now, Eric Lansing, along with Mikey Renault. And, of course,
The champ is here.
Todd Diamond
Yeah.
is here with us as well, the reigning champion of the league. Still tough to say after all this time. How we doing, fellas? Todd, how you feeling?
Oh, that was great. Oh, sounded so awesome. Sounded great.
Yeah, you
Reigning
like that?
champ.
Champ is here.
Rating champ. Thank you. Now I'm going to be humble now. Thank you. Because now I have the target on my back now.
I doubt it.
I know,
Mikey,
probably
how we
not.
doing?
I mean, I'm doing, good. I have to say, I love that intro. We had a little R&B kicking,
Yeah.
and then, I had this idea in my head that it said, "Oh yeah," and then you hear Todd saying, "Oh yeah," freaked me out a little bit.
Eh,
There you go. Got to bring in a new intro for this brand new season here. Man, fantasy football. The NFL season's coming up quick. So on this first episode, we're just going to talk about the old faces and new places. We kind of do this episode every year about players going to new destinations and what that means fantasy wise. And we're not going to get to everybody, right, Mikey? There is a ton of people that moved in the offseason.
Yeah, it was nuts all over the place. It felt like it took maybe like months for all these people to move around. It's just, yeah, we got a lot to get to today.
So we're going to get right into it. And then if we don't get to a certain quarterback or running back or wide receiver, guess what? We have the quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs preview podcast. So we'll get to them. We just may not get to everybody today. So let's just get into it. Let's start with quarterbacks. And of course, Kirk Cousins, who after spending the last 6 seasons with the Minnesota Vikings, decided to sign a 4-year deal with the Atlanta Falcons. 4 years, $180 million, $100 million guaranteed. Atlanta dealt with Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ridder last season, and that squad went 7-10 with those two guys at the helm. Last year, Cousins was having an all-pro type season. He was actually leading our fantasy league in points scored before going down with a torn ACL in Week 8, which of course means he may not be ready for Week 1. Now, that has not been officially said, but that's something to think about. So we'll start here with Todd. Todd, how are we feeling about Kirk Cousins? Cousins was the 6th-ranked quarterback in terms of points in our league 2 years ago, and of course, he was having that great year last year. Is Cousins someone you may be targeting it as a starting quarterback for your fantasy football team this year, or are there injury concerns you're worried about?
He's definitely a quarterback that is definitely on my radar. He's obviously going for Minnesota, where he had probably the best wide receiver in the league and Justin Jefferson to throw the ball to. So now he's going from Justin Jefferson to Drake London. That's not the best transition, but he's going to have to throw a lot in that offense because it's still the Falcons. That defense is, whenever it figures itself out, maybe that, who knows when that'll be. They're going to have to throw the ball a lot. Now he goes to a situation with Bijan Robinson, a better all-purpose running back. He did really well in his rookie year. Obviously the injury definitely is a little bit of concern, but we'll see. We're just in July. Training camp hasn't even started yet, so we'll see how that goes. But Kirk Cousins is definitely an interesting quarterback that I that I have on my radar because he's going to have to throw the ball a lot, plain and simple, because they're going to be behind just the way that defense is. And, projection, I mean, he could throw for almost maybe 5,000 yards,
Yeah, the offensive line is supposed to be great again this season. They bring back the entire unit from 1 year ago. Mikey, Todd kind of mentioned the weapons. He mentioned Bijan Robinson. They have guys like Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Rondale Moore, and of course our favorite Kyle Pitts. Is that enough weapons for Mr. Cousins to succeed once he eventually gets back into the mix?
I think so. I'm not too keen on, Rondell Moore and Darnell Mooney. Those are like two guys that in seasons previous that people have had, upside hopes for that have crushed people's dreams. But hey, maybe with a better quarterback, maybe they provide something. Uh, I look for big things out of Drake London. This is like the first time, that he's got an actual like real quarterback throwing him the ball. So I feel like he'll be able to reach his potential with, a good quarterback behind center. And then the elephant in the room is Kyle Pitts because people have been waiting for what, three
This
to
is the
four
year.
years.
This is the
Yeah,
year.
it's always the year. The one thing I will say though is, I mean, if you're going to have a quarterback that likes to throw to tight ends, you remember in Washington, like Jordan Reed had some pretty big seasons with Kirk Cousins back there. TJ Hawkinson had some
Yeah.
big seasons in Minnesota with Cousins back there. So this actually might be the year.
I think that's the most positive thing Mikey's ever said about Kyle Pitts.
Yes, yeah, I think you definitely have to save that part of the recording because yeah, because here's the bottom line too with Kyle Pitts. We'd say finally that the Falcons finally brought in a quarterback that's worth a damn, and you have Kyle Pitts that came in when he came in the league with all this hype and what he could do and everything in between, right? If Kyle Pitts can't get it done with Kirk Cousins, then I think we can tombstone and be done with it and be done with Kyle Pitts because there'd be no hope after that.
So there's Kirk Cousins. The rest of these moving quarterbacks, here's the list, and you guys can feel free to chat about any of these guys. I don't know if they're super fantasy relevant, but maybe there's something that you guys see that I don't see. But of course, us Broncos fans knew Russell Wilson. He ended up venturing over to Pittsburgh, and he's going to join Justin Fields, who's also now with the Steelers. You have with the Browns, Jameis Winston, who's going to back up Deshaun Watson. And of course, that means Winston could get in the game because Watson has a hard time staying on the field. The Colts bring in Joe Flacco after his major playoff run 1 year ago. The Jaguars going to bring in Mac Jones, former high draft pick from the Patriots, who couldn't cut the mustard over there in New England. You have the Raiders, Gardner Minshew, going to battle with Aiden O'Connell for the lead spot over there in Vegas. Seahawks bring in Sam Howell to back up the starting quarterback over there that Geno Smith. Took me forever to figure that out. And then how about Marcus Mariota back in the league with the Commanders? Anybody fantasy worthy there, Mikey?
I mean, at best, these are, backup to free agent pickup guys in case of injury. Like, we assume Russell Wilson's going to be the starter in Pittsburgh. And, even if he is, he's nothing more than a backup quarterback. The rest of these guys are just going to be, they're backups as it is, except for Minshew, who's probably going to be a starter. But even then, he's probably, just a waiver wire guy.
Todd, any of these guys stand out to you that could make their mark fantasy-wise? Are they a bunch of streamers or just a bunch of guys that God help you if they end up on your team?
Jameis Winston's an interesting one for me because obviously he can chuck the ball pretty well as as well. Yeah, I mean it all depends on Deshaun Watson. If Deshaun Watson goes down again. Again, I mean obviously Jameis Winston would just be would be a streaming option, or if you really think you want draft him just as an emergency situation because because you're afraid of what Deshaun Watson can do when it comes to injuries. But other than that, yeah, these quarterbacks, I'm not touching with a 10-foot pole.
All right, we got our 10-foot pole in the first episode. That's good.
Awesome.
Mark your bingo cards.
Todd bingo card.
Todd bingo
card. So not a lot of quarterbacks, and then obviously, we want to get to those running back and wide receivers. So there you go. Those are the quarterbacks on the move. All right, let's get into some running backs, and there are a ton, so much movement. I would love to chat with you guys about the state of the running back position in football, but we really got to get into these kind of moving parts. I have something like 18 running backs on this list, which is just bonkers. And we're not going to get to all of them, but we're going to get to the ones that matter the most. And then depending on what time, we have to cut it short, but let's just get into it. Saquon Barkley is probably arguably the biggest name, who was with the Giants, of course, now with the Eagles. He was former second-round pick in 2018, 3 years, $37.5 million with that Philadelphia squad. 6 years with the Giants. He ran for more than 5,200 yards in his career. He's caught 288 balls and scored 47 total touchdowns last season. Barkley ran for just under 1,000 yards in 14 games played while chipping in 10 touchdowns. So, Todd, we saw DeAndre Swift run for 1,000 yards in his only season with the Eagles last year. Is Barkley better than Swift? And what should we expect stats-wise? And I always like to ask you that because you always come up with something.
Fantastic. I say 1,500 yards he rushes for the Eagles, and then I'd say 10 rushing touchdowns and 5 receiving touchdowns. So 15 total touchdowns. Obviously, the Eagles do lose Jason Kelce. That was a big part of their offensive line. So obviously they have to fill the need there. But I think Barkley, is going to a better situation where he has, better quarterback, better wide receiver, actual wide receivers compared to what the Giants were, dragging out the last 2 years in New York. So I think Barkley is gonna have a big year. I'll go bold prediction. He finishes in the top 5 for fantasy for running backs this upcoming season.
Well, we're not to that episode just yet, but feel free to throw them out whenever you want. Mikey, last year, Barkley finished 11th overall amongst running backs in our scoring system. Does Barkley's stock go up now that he's in Philly? Jalen Hurts still in the mix. It's going to, we obviously know about the tush push, and I think Hurts had like 15 rushing touchdowns a year ago, so maybe it doesn't go up. How are you looking at Barkley this season?
Well, first of all, so if he gets 1,500 rushing yards, I mean, that would have led the league last year. So, I mean, Todd's got like super high hopes for Saquon. I do too. Yes, they'll have to replace Kelce. But the biggest thing is I don't think that he has to do like that much more than he did with the Giants to be successful. You look at his yards per carry. I mean, in the years in his career where he's been above 4 yards a carry, I mean, those have been years where he's been top 10 in fantasy. And if you look at Eagles running backs, over the years, DeAndre Swift, Miles Sanders, these guys were getting close to 5 yards per carry. If he does that, I think there's a good shot of him reaching, I'm not going to say 1,500. That seems like a very large number to me. But, I mean, I figure that it would put him over 1,000. And if he can get to double-digit touchdowns, then, yeah, he'll finish as a top 10 back.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. And Barkley is going to be on a winning team. He's, and, the Eagles were like mid-pack in terms of rushing attempts, but they were 7th in the league in total touchdowns. So the scoring is going to go up. His opportunities are going to go up, even with Jalen Hurts vulturing away some of those touchdowns. And that'll be a little frustrating for those owners. But, I mean, he's only 27 years old. I don't know if that's old in running back years, but, I feel pretty good about him as well. So, we'll talk about where we rank him when we get to that point. I didn't ask you guys to do rankings quite yet, but Saquon Barkley now with the Eagles. Let's talk about a running back who's been a top fantasy option the last few years, and that's Austin Eckler, who signed a 2-year contract with the Washington Commanders, $11.43 million total. Talk about a fall from grace. Of course, Austin Eckler, Division II hero for us, who works with the Metro State School and all that fun stuff. The former Charger, now a Commander. He led the league in total touchdowns the last 2 years. Eckler scored just 6 touchdowns in 2023, however, ran for just 628 yards for an average of 3.5 yards per carry. Did catch 51 receptions, but that was kind of down considering you caught 177 passes the previous 2 seasons. So I'll start with you, Miguel. Eckler wasn't the only guy who didn't play well with the Chargers last year. I mean, you had Keenan Allen as well and saw firsthand what was going on with that offense. They have everything, coaching staff brand new. So can Eckler rebound to be what we've seen? He's still a very young guy, but now he's in Washington, maybe not going to be as prolific. I mean, they have a lot of changes over there as well. They also have Brian Robinson, who's picked up a bunch of fantasy numbers last season at least. Is Eckler done as a top 5 option? I mean, he was one of the first few drafted the last few years. Running backs, I mean.
Well, if you ask him, he says he's not. I was reading an article where he was saying that last year it was all on the Chargers, that it was their fault. It also had to do with injuries. He said he hurt both ankles, which wasn't helpful. I have to believe that he's not. The way that you frame that question, is he done as a top 5 running back? I would say yes, just given situation, because as you mentioned, Brian Robinson is there. And, I think that's going to be more of a split. But I do think he will be better than he was last year. I think the receptions are still there for him. He's got his old coach, Anthony Lynn, who's his running backs coach now in Washington, which I think will help him. So I'm not as down as I think a lot of people are on him. And I think he'll be better than last year, but top 5 seems way too high based on situation he's in.
Sure. And I think it doesn't help that Jaden Daniels, his new quarterback, is also kind of a running quarterback that may steal away some yards and some carries and some touchdowns as well. I mean, he's obviously very new himself, so that may hinder the offense a little bit as well. I mean, when you're talking about people are down, people are viewing him, just based on stuff I've read and seen on social media, that they're viewing him as a third down back, that he's not going to get anywhere near the carries. And so I find that hard to believe. They didn't pay him like a top running back based on what they gave him. So that makes me pause, because if you're going to pay him, and maybe it's more of a prove it contract to Eckler, but I don't know. It's Todd. What do you think on Austin Eckler? Are you viewing him as a top 10, 15 guy, or you think he's going to be more of a third down back type of running back?
Well, I think the reception still may be there. The receptions may go up just because you have a rookie quarterback in Daniels, but the rushing attempts, that's definitely going to go down, because Brian Robinson Jr. will probably be taking the majority of, maybe at least the first 2 downs, and maybe those goal line carries away as well. And he's going to a situation where the Commanders have not been good for a long, long time. You have a new head coach, you have a rookie quarterback, everything it's just not in the favor of a running back that's been in the league for a long time. And to me, he might even drop to, you said maybe top 10 or maybe top 20. He might drop even that far, depending on how good the Commanders are. But Eckler, if he, because he was talking about how he, I agree with he doesn't want to be a bell cow type running back or whatever case may be, and to me that doesn't give me a lot of confidence. So I think Eckler, like I said, I think Eckler drops like top 20.
All right, so I'm going to ask you this question. Just give me one answer, because we have to keep going.
Okay.
Who would you guys take first if you had the option? Brian Robinson Jr. or Austin Eckler, Mikey?
Eckler, because receptions gives me the floor, and I just always like taking that.
Todd?
I'll go with Robinson.
Last year, Eckler, you mentioned the 51 receptions. finished 29th amongst all running backs, 6 total touchdowns. Definitely a down year, not just for him, for the Chargers. So we'll see how the preseason and training camp, and if there's anything we learn, we'll figure that out as we go along. Another big running back that moved was Derrick Henry. Talk about another guy that was one of the best all time, probably a surefire Hall of Famer when he's done. No longer in Tennessee. He's moved to the East Coast to lead the lead the charge in Baltimore. The 4-time Pro Bowler and 2020 All-Pro running back signed a 2-year deal, $16 million with those Ravens. 8 years with the Titans. Todd, we know Baltimore loves to run the ball. They led the NFL with 541 rushing attempts. So this could be the best possible place for Henry to go. Should owners consider drafting Derrick Henry in the first round, or do you feel he's kind of past his prime?
Well, first round is a little, probably a little too high, but I'd say maybe second round. But he's definitely going into a better situation with Baltimore, Baltimore compared to Tennessee, just in the sense that Henry had to do everything in Tennessee. He had to do everything. Now, obviously, that's what you want. I'm not denying that. But going into Baltimore now with better quarterback, better wide receiver, everything around you that, and obviously we know Lamar can run. So obviously, depending on how figure out with the goal line situations, it might be in the favor of Derrick Henry because they may not want Lamar, running in for touchdowns because obviously that's how you get injured. So, first round, little too rich for my blood, but second round for sure. Maybe like the first few picks in the second round, I'd be comfortable drafting Derrick Henry.
Well, you have the first pick in the second round, so you get to decide if you wanted Derrick Henry at that point. But we'll talk about that as we get closer. I'm not going to throw you on the spot right then and there. All right, Mikey, we've seen Ravens running backs do well in that system. Of course, we talked about Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. They've been dealing with injuries, but Gus Edwards, double-digit touchdowns and 800 yards last year in that offense. Neither of those guys are there with Baltimore, so it's going to be Derrick Henry, and if you believe in Justice Hill, so it seems like it's going to be Henry's show. Should we be excited to jump on the train that is Derrick Henry?
I think you should. It is 6 consecutive years that he's had double-digit touchdowns.
Great stat.
In this systems that Baltimore was running last year, Gus Edwards had 13 touchdowns, all inside the 10-yard line. And so you don't really worry about Lamar Jackson at all. Like, you could take Derrick Henry, who last year had 12 touchdowns, and this could be closer to his 2019-2020, where he had 16 and 17 rushing touchdowns. It could be that type of year for him. Now, what really determines whether or not he's a first-round pick is how many carries he actually gets, to kind of push him. Is he more of just a low 1,000 yards, or is he closer to that 1,500 yard Derrick Henry? If he is, then yeah, he is a first-round pick.
And I agree. And they only signed him to 2 years. So they have 2 years to run him into the ground. So I feel like they're not going to change what they do well, and that's run the football. And I think this is just the perfect place for Derrick Henry to go. He's not going to have to worry about catching that many passes. Maybe Justice Hill takes a big part of that in the offense, but man, I'm kind of excited to see what he's going to do here. He's not your normal everyday running back. He's 30 years old. So a lot of people say, oh, that's the downturn for running backs, but he is a beast that continues even in some bad Tennessee teams where there was no threat of passing the ball down the field, or at least passing, consistently. And he still was able to put up close to 1,200 yards 1 year ago. So I'm kind of excited. First round, second round, I think it just depends on, if it's a wide receiver heavy first round, then he probably will slip into the second. I think it just depends on where you have Derrick Henry in your rankings, but I'm kind of high on him too at this point in time. He's stayed relatively healthy. And so I'm kind of, we'll see. Derrick Henry finished 7th last year in points in our league. All right, let's go to another running back. How about Mr. Joe Mixon. He had 1,400 yards of total offense to go along with 12 total touchdowns. And in the offseason, traded from Cincinnati to Houston and did so for a 7th-round pick. They made the trade after bringing in Zach Moss. So Cincinnati traded Mixon away because they got Moss. So Mikey, if I can just get my stupid cursor on my screen, thank you. I don't think Mikey was the biggest Joe Mixon fan over the last couple of years. I'm not sure if that was because of the situation in Cincinnati or his yards per carry, or if he snubbed him from an autograph somewhere. I don't know. But how does Mikey feel about Mr. Joe Mixon now that he's with the Texans, who seems like they have a lot of offensive threats going on there?
Yeah, I feel the same.
Feel the same. I love it. You're consistent. I can rely on Mikey to be the same way every year.
Yeah, I mean, he was in a good offense in Cincinnati. I mean, it's not like it's
lots
that
of
big
injuries
of a
with Joe Burrow. I don't know.
When I watch him, it's just kind of like Joe Mixon is who he is. It's like here's a stat for you. And who had Joe Mixon last year? I don't remember, but like I know you've had him in the past.
I've had it, 2 years ago. I think I had
him. And this is kind of tells you I'm about to throw a stat at you, and I'm sure this won't surprise you. So last year he had 38 attempts inside the 10-yard line. He had 8 touchdowns off 38 attempts. Like he just, I don't know. You would assume he's, maybe a little bit bigger guy able to break tackles, but that's just not the case with Joe Mixon. Like he's just not he's not a Derrick Henry. He's not that type of runner. And you're right. They do have all these weapons in the passing game now. He's still I think he'll fall where he normally does, late 2nd round, early 3rd. I just don't see any big time upside to get him any higher than that.
Okay, I hear you there. He's been pretty consistent with his receptions in the last 3 years, 52, 60, 42. Todd, I mean, you're a big numbers guy. Where do you see Mixon's numbers going in 2024?
Well, I think he definitely rushes for at least 1,000 yards. Touchdown wise, rushing, I think, only by like five rushing touchdowns, but receptions and receiving touchdowns, I think he at least gets six receiving touchdowns, and I think he gets close to that, maybe that 60 reception range, because the Texans offense is, obviously we saw what CJ Stroud did in his rookie year. Now you're adding, you add Stephon Diggs, and then you bring in Joe Mixon. This Texans offense could be special. This could be special. I'm not saying it's gonna, it's not gonna break the NFL, record for the most points in a season. I don't think they're there, but could come pretty close. This offense is definitely is going to be exciting. So I think if you have anybody in that offense, you're definitely going to get some points and get rewarded for it each week, I think.
So wait a minute. So Todd basically said 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns total, 60 receptions. Now, I'm sure Eric is looking at Joe Mixon's stats, and that pretty much is Joe Mixon last year.
Yeah. 52 receptions, like 11. What do you had? 9, 10, 11, 12 total touchdowns.
Well, I said he maybe gets 60, so maybe 10 more. But
essentially, nothing changes.
The same dude. Yeah. He finished 6th in our scoring last year.
Well, it's just too. The reason is because obviously there's a lot of mouths to feed in this offense this year. So somebody has to be, not everybody's stats are going to be, are going to be out of this world. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, you have to go back and see, but it's for another day. But you look at when the Broncos did in 2013 and what the Patriots did. There was somebody who, didn't have, like, not everybody's stats were just, just crazy. Somebody had to get the lower end of the stat, but still put up great numbers. So you got to look at it that way.
New coat of paint. That's pretty much it.
The thing about Joe Mixon, we talked about, he's not efficient. Volume is a huge factor for Joe Mixon to be successful. He was 5th in the league in rushing attempts 1 season ago. If something happens where he gets hurt, if you slow down for any reason, maybe the ball being thrown is what they're going to do over there in Houston. It's going to affect him. But I feel like he's just the same guy. He's going to finish somewhere anywhere between 6th and 12th amongst running backs. And then there's a place for that. His upside's just not going to be through the roof as like a Derrick Henry or some of those early round guys. So Joe Mixon now with Houston. The next running back, DeAndre Swift, is on the move for the second straight year. After 3 years in Detroit and 1 year with Philly, the former second-round pick signed a 3-year, $24 million deal with the Chicago Bears. Todd, should we get excited for DeAndre Swift, who goes to a team that ranks second in all of the NFL in rushing attempts? Really, Roshan Johnson and Khalil Herbert are his biggest competition in Chicago.
Yeah, I don't think Swift's going to have to worry about that. I think Swift will be the primary guy when the season starts. I mean, obviously you have a rookie quarterback in the mix with Caleb Williams. So obviously Williams is definitely going to be, depend on him a lot, So Swift could definitely, be in for another good, 1,000-yard, rushing year with the Bears and add some receptions in there because I always say a rookie quarterback's best friend is either a tight end or a running back because they're still trying to figure it out. So DeAndre Swift is definitely capable. So I think he'll be the main guy going in to the season. So I'm high on DeAndre Swift.
So, Mikey, there's buzz for this rushing game that features some new parts in terms of the top rookie quarterback being drafted. Keenan Allen joins the fray. He has the potential to be a workhorse running back. I mean, he obviously leaves a better line in Philly, but how are you feeling about DeAndre Swift?
Well, I'll say that Bears being ranked high in rushing attempts, it makes no difference this year because 147 of those attempts came from quarterbacks last year.
Yeah.
So, they lose all of that with trading Justin Fields. So, I mean, I think they're going to be more heavily geared towards the passing attack. It's the reason why they brought in all the weapons that they did with Keenan Allen and now pairing him with DJ Moore and then the rookie Roma Dunze. So I don't feel like DeAndre Swift is a bell cow. That's my worry. And if they try to make him one, I don't believe that he'll be able to stay healthy. He's had problems with that in the past. 1,000 yards, sure, maybe. He's got a rookie quarterback behind him, so I feel like they're going to need him to be a big part of things. But I mean, you take a look at it, he's never had a double-digit season with as far as touchdowns go, which kind of worries me. So I don't think he fits the criteria for being like that top 10-ish type running backs. It's a decent situation, but I don't like it as much as his situation was in Philly.
Yeah, DeAndre Swift's 5'9" and 215. He had to kind of carry the bulk in his first year with Detroit. But this is a little bit, I mean, you get paid and they're going to ask him to carry the load. I mean, I think the offense is going to be fine. I don't think it's going to be in the Philly range of things, but I'll be interested to see if he can hold up. He's last year, I think he played in 16 games, so still has not played a full arraignment of games, if you will. He played 13 games, 13, 14, and last year 16. So can his body, he had 229 attempts last year, but we know Philly ran a lot of Jalen Hurts and of course getting Kenneth Gainwell and Boston in that one as well. So yeah, I feel okay about him. He's someone I would, if he's in the right spot, he's someone I can take a look at. Okay. So, we are about 35 minutes in and we haven't even touched wide receivers. So we're going to, rapid fires through some of these. Todd, Aaron, that's your boy, Aaron Jones, now with the Minnesota Vikings, 1 year, $7 million. How you feeling about Aaron Jones? And try to do it with your best unbiased opinion.
That's going to be too hard. But, yeah. I mean, going in another situation, he's going to be the main guy, running it, versatile. I mean, what I haven't already said about Aaron Jones, it hasn't already been said about the Mona Lisa. So let's move on, shall we?
That was
What
quick.
does that even mean?
Yeah.
Because Aaron
Are you
Jones is
saying he's
that.
a top 5? He's a top 10 guy?
Yeah, he's just. I mean, you know, you look you look at
No,
Aaron Jones and
no.
you're just marveled by him. I mean, it's just,
Just marveled.
yeah. I don't know. It's
How is he in the world? How is he going to be a top 10 guy with Sam Darnold as his quarterback? That's what I'd like to know.
well, I think um, I forgot his name now. Uh, uh,
McCarthy?
McCarthy. Yeah, I think McCarthy somehow beats out Aaron Donald, Sam Darnold in preseason. So I think that one will. I'll put that as a board bet. But Aaron Jones is just first. He's just Aaron Jones is just a football player. He just goes out and just does his job. Just does his job and does it well. Catches the ball, runs hard, does everything he asks for him. So we can move on to Tony Pollard here.
I kind of want to continue to go, but I mean, top 10, top 10 running back.
Top 10
Oh
running back who
man.
has 8 touchdowns in the rushing touchdowns in the last 3 seasons total. I rest my case.
Maybe
Still,
we'll come back to him. Mikey, Tony Pollard had some success with Dallas the last couple of years. You mentioned that you felt like he was not going to succeed as much as he had last year with the Cowboys because of his build, and now he's in Tennessee. Kind of replaces Derrick Henry, if that's the right way to put that. I don't know if that's the right way to put that, but go ahead.
He does. They also have Tajay Spears there, so I think there's going to be some split going on. Tennessee is a hard place to be. You know, Will Levis being the quarterback there, his situations to score are not going to be as prevalent as they were in Dallas. Um, he barely hit 1,000 yards in each of the 2 seasons that he did. I don't think he does this year. I am not looking for big things out of Tony Pollard.
There's a lot of hype with Tajay Spears. And while Pollard is making the money on that team, I kind of agree. I think it's going to be split. They're going to ride the hot hand. And I wonder as we get closer if Spears kind of overtakes Pollard in terms of who people are drafting first based on what we see in preseason games. All right, Josh Jacobs, I'm going to talk about him. Of course, I had him on my team 1 year ago, and somewhat disappointing. He now leaves Vegas to go to Green Bay. He had a huge 2022, had a ton of carries over something like 370. The offense was terrible for the Vikings 1 year ago. Of course, he's going to take over for Todd's man crush. Aaron Jones might be bigger than a man crush. I don't even know what that's called. But Jacobs was electric when he was healthy. And when the Packers, they allowed Jones to leave from Minnesota, as we know, Jacobs comes in. A.J. Dillon still in the mix. Dillon still got 178 carries for 614 yards, but only at 3.4 yards per carry. So this is going to be Jacobs' job. He's going to get all those carries in an offense that's now kind of improved. We saw a lot of growth from Jordan Love 1 season ago. Jacobs did run for a career low 3.5 yards per carry, but the bad offense, that was a huge part of it. They stacked the line. Packers top 10 offense from 1 season ago, have a top 8 offensive line. So while I was incredibly high, I got him in the 4th round last year, I still feel like Josh Jacobs has an opportunity to be an incredibly productive running back. I know the one thing that I saw a lot of was a lot of 3 and outs last year in that Raiders offense. I feel like with what they're doing in Green Bay, the offense is going to run a little bit better. He had 393 touches 2 years ago. He had 270. So maybe his legs are a little more fresher than what we saw. Cause I know there's that stat out there. If you run for over 350 attempts or total touches, that, the next year is a little more difficult on the old body. But Josh Jacobs, I think he's in a good place. Mikey mentioned a fresh coat of paint. Maybe that things go well for him. Mikey, we mentioned Zach. We haven't mentioned it yet. Maybe we did. Zach Moss now with the Bengals. He played well in 14 games with the Colts 1 season ago. The former Buffalo Bill ran for close to 800 yards for a 4.3 yard per carry total. caught 27 balls, had a total of 7 touchdowns. Should he be a number one? Or I should say a number, I don't know, I have number 2 here. What do you think about Zach Moss with the Bengals now? He takes over for Joe Mixon.
I mean, I think he fits in as a solid RB2 in fantasy. Like, he's going to go into that offense, fill that Joe Mixon role. They don't really have anybody fighting him for that role. And like I said before, this is a good offense that he has primarily based off of Burrow and the 2 receivers. But when it comes down to getting in that red zone, it's not like they weren't giving Mixon attempts. So Moss is going to have his chances to be productive.
His main competition, Chase Brown, who some folks are high on, and Trayvon Williams. So, yeah, I feel like he's going to get a bulk of the carry. Trying to finishing things up here with these running backs. I'm going to reel these off, and if you guys want to talk about them, definitely do so. We see Cordell Patterson was with the Falcons, now with the Steelers. DJ Dallas now in Arizona. Ty Johnson now in Buffalo. Naeem Hines with the Browns on a 1-year deal. Deonta Foreman with the Browns also on a 1-year deal. Alexander Madison, huge disappointment from 1 year ago, now with the Raiders. Gus Edwards, as we mentioned, now with the Chargers. Antonio Gibson with the Patriots, and Devin Singletary with the Giants. You guys want to talk about any of those guys? Mikey, we'll start with you.
Well, Alexander Madison is somebody that, you figured last year, he was going to get his chance with Minnesota, and things didn't really work out. He got hurt. And here he is again. He goes to the Raiders, who just lost Josh Jacobs. They have Zamir White over there. I don't know. It could be an opportunity for him to snake some carries, maybe have an opportunity to do well over there. I mean, the other guy would be Devin Singletary. If you were watching Hard Knocks, they kind of talked about how he was somebody who the GM really liked, and now he's going to go in there and replace Saquon Barkley, and for an offense that needs something. So, I mean, yeah, there's 2 of those guys that maybe have a chance to do something.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on Singletary. Currently, Eric Gray, Tyrone Tracy, and Jashawn Corbin are the main competition for Devin Singletary. Singletary has averaged 850 yards, 36 receptions, and 5 touchdowns the last 3 seasons. So that's not like top of the running back heap. That's still running back 3 guy that you're going to bring in. And, the offense, or the Giants, brought in some help on the offensive line, which they desperately need. And he's averaged 4.6 yards per carry. So I like Devin Singletary as a late option. Todd, any of these guys stand out to you?
Antonio Gibson is an interesting one with New England. Obviously, new regime there. I mean, Stevenson is still the main guy, but Gibson could be that change of pace type back for New England. Could be that, I don't know, Brandon Bolden type role maybe, or I think another running back New England's had that's kind of a change pace type back. It could be interesting. Could be interesting for Gibson in New England.
All right, let's get to those wide receivers. And there's no bigger wide receiver than Stephon Diggs. I mean, more of, not necessarily he's the tallest guy or the biggest guy, but he's obviously the number 1 guy that was moved in the offseason, traded for the second time in his career. Diggs perhaps had enough of his time in Buffalo, was sent to pretty good place in Houston, along with a 2024 6th-round pick, 2025 5th-round pick, for, of course, Diggs, and a 2025 2nd-round pick, if I got that right. Diggs goes from being the number 1 wide receiver in one of the most prolific offenses in football to an up-and-coming squad who we saw when we talked about. Looks like it has the makings of its own big-time passing offense. But he'll be sharing the limelight this time with a couple of breakout wideouts, and Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and even Noah Brown before he got hurt. Mikey, this is a guy who's been drafted in the first 2 rounds regularly the last 4 years or so. He's been around 1,200 to 1,400 yards receiving, averaging 9 touchdowns the last 4 years. A lot of rankings I've seen him being drafted as the 2nd Texan off the board, kind of going around anywhere I've seen from like 26 to 35 in terms of wide receivers off the board. Not overall, amongst wide receivers, 26 to 35. How are you viewing Diggs here these days? Are you high on him? Are you low on him? Or maybe you hope you don't have to make that decision?
I'm always high on Diggs. Like, And I was somebody that had him on my team last year when he fell off a cliff the second half of the season.
Yeah, he
But
might have cost you your championship.
maybe, but that doesn't mean I don't believe that his career died halfway through the season. Like,
They got a new offensive coordinator last year during the season, right?
yeah, and they ran the ball a lot more after Joe Brady came in as the OC. Um, there was some internal issues, if you want to read into that, between him and Josh Allen and him and the coach, and that's just Stephon Diggs. That's what got him kicked out of Minnesota. Um, but yeah, I'm going to use Todd's cliche here that he's got the old chip on the shoulder now
Oh,
going
yes.
into Houston. And yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to, and I've seen it just like you have, where people have Nico Collins over him. I just don't believe that that's correct. I mean, Stephon Diggs, 5 out of the last 6 years, he's been over 100 catches. All the last 6 years over, 1,000 yards. And most of these are 11 to 1,200, 1,300 even. So, I mean, he is a big time playmaker. I think, yeah, they've got a good receiving core. I just think that'll make things easier for Diggs. And while I don't think the market calls for him to be a first round pick, I think he has first round pick upside.
Wow, I like that. Todd, are you? I don't think you're as high on Diggs as Mikey and I, but would you draft Diggs as the top Houston wide receiver, or are you one of the Tank Dell guys or Nico Collin guys?
I mean, I had Tank Dell. I traded for Tank Dell last year, and obviously he was doing great before he got hurt. Ironically, on a 2-point conversion, when he was trying to push the pile. But at this point, Stephon Diggs, I'm drafting Stephon Diggs over Dell and Collins. I mean, Stephon Diggs is an all-pro wide receiver. I mean, there is, and you're putting him in a situation where, yeah, second year quarterback, but a second year quarterback who just pretty much shocked the world last year. What CJ Stroud did last year in the first season with the Texans. So yeah, Stephon Diggs, I'm drafting over Tank Dell and Nico Collins. I mean, you're telling me you're bringing in an all pro wide receiver, regardless of whether he fell off a little bit, in the second half of the season. I'm still going Stephon Diggs.
All right, keeping it rolling here. Keenan Allen, who after 11 years with the Chargers now joins the Chicago Bears. Last season, Allen reached 100 receptions for the 5th time in his career and did so despite even missing 5 games. Todd, Allen goes from Justin Herbert to rookie Caleb Williams. Allen will be sharing targets with DJ Moore and in that Windy City. How are you looking at Keenan Allen?
Well, me and Keenan Allen,
Yeah.
obviously injury prone,
So he hates him,
galore.
just hates him. No
I just
loyalty.
No loyalty, no loyalty. He's not. Leave him off my rankings.
Oh my gosh. It's so
Don't.
funny. Like I just mentioned, like, oh, I love Todd or Mikey that he's so consistent. Todd is just as consistent.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, obviously he's going to a situation, the rookie quarterback, new offense. You got to see. I mean, the offensive line is going to be the key too, because obviously if you can't protect Caleb Williams, he's not going to get the ball to Keenan Allen. But check his 84 receptions this year and almost 800 plus yards. I say at least gets to 900 receiving yards and maybe 1 or 2 more touchdowns. His projected is 5. I say I'll give him a solid 7. I'll give him 7 touchdowns. So that's what he had last year. I think DJ Moore will definitely take a majority of the targets from Keenan Allen. And obviously you have a rookie too, but obviously we won't talk about that till the next podcast. But not as high on Keenan Allen. Yeah.
Mikey, I believe you had Keenan Allen last year, right?
I did.
So are you in the same boat that since he burned you, you'll never draft and look at him again? But I mean, I know my question was Allen or his teammate DJ Moore. Who would you draft first? But I don't think you're ready to give up on Keenan Allen because of a new situation and so forth, or him burning you from last year.
No, and I question Todd's injury proneness moniker
Yeah, I don't
too.
agree with
Like
that either.
the games he missed. Like if you saw anything about the Chargers season last year, they pretty much gave up and said, we're not playing any of these guys the rest of the year. We're just taking the rest of the season and firing our coach." So it was a disaster at the end for the Chargers. I do think it'll be a little bit difficult for him because you're taking a player that, he's basically played 11 years in the same place. And anytime that a player moves out of a situation where they've been there like for a long extended period of time like that, there's a little bit of a just adjustment period, I would say. Uh, to say that DJ Moore would be the more targeted guy, I disagree with. DJ Moore is more of a big playmaker down the field type. Keenan Allen is, for his career, has been a target machine. I mean, he had 150 targets in 13 games last year, which is just nuts. Um, so yeah, I'm not gonna give up on Keenan Allen. He's still, to me, he's older and new place and rookie quarterback, but he's still a solid receiver. Um, yeah, I kind of go against Todd's thinking on that.
Keenan Allen is still 32, but I mean, rarely did it look. I mean, he was one of the top receivers, I think, in that first half of the year. He was up there with some of the big time names in terms of fantasy points. And once that team just kind of crash landed, it was just no point for them to even play him. So I think Keenan Allen's going to be just fine. Let's move on to Calvin Ridley. Big contract was given to the biggest wide receiver contract was given to Calvin Ridley this offseason. Titans gave the former Falcon and Jaguar 4 years and $92 million. Ridley had a nice 2023 season coming off that suspended year 2 years ago. He caught 76 passes, over 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. Mikey, Ridley has seen Matt Ryan and Trevor Lawrence for a majority of his career. He will now catch passes from the very young and unproven Will Levis. Is Ridley a guy that you feel can be good, can be a top kind of 15 wide receiver after finishing 17th one season ago?
Oh boy,
Yeah, tough question. Definitely when I was going through this.
I just don't think he's that guy. Like eye test wise, like he had the one like explosion year in 2020 with the Falcons. And I don't want to seem like I'm like totally bashing Calvin Ridley here because for not playing a whole season when he was suspended, like last year it was solid, but I didn't think like it was like fantastic. Like to me, he was a little bit inconsistent throughout the season. And now he's getting this super large contract going into a place where the quarterback is 10 times worse than Trevor Lawrence for what that's worth. New coach, an offense that's probably not going to be very good. I don't see him being top 15 wide receiver this year.
I think that's fair. I think once Christian Kirk went down, he got a majority of the targets. Him and Evan Ingram and Lawrence had to throw the ball quite a bit last season. I think he's a solid wide receiver. I don't know if he's a top 15 guy. Todd, what do you think? Ridley has been a touchdown machine, 36 touchdowns in 66 games. So he's definitely a guy that can get it done. But do you feel Will Levis can get him enough balls to be fantasy worthy in 2024?
No, because I think DeAndre Hopkins is still the number one option on that team. I don't know. Calvin really just hasn't. I don't know. If I was going to between the two, I'd draft Hopkins over Ridley. I wasn't really maybe only I'd say maybe going back to his rookie year, maybe that was about it because I had Ridley when he was a rookie, but I think Hopkins is still the main guy, and I don't know Ridley. Probably, I mean, he'll get you the touchdowns, but I don't know about it's tricky. It's tricky. I don't know. I just think Hopkins is the main guy, and Ridley's just not really. I'm just not really high on Ridley anymore, as much as I was in the beginning of his career.
Mikey, real quick, and maybe we'll talk about this more in the wide receivers episode, but who would you draft first, DeAndre Hopkins or Calvin Ridley?
I would draft Calvin Ridley just because, as good as the name DeAndre Hopkins is, I don't believe DeAndre Hopkins is DeAndre Hopkins anymore.
Hopkins 32, Ridley 29. We'll talk more about that as we go along. Okay, we got to fast forward. We're like 56 minutes. So let's see. Mikey, thoughts on Mike Williams, who, of course, you know the Chargers more than anyone. You had to watch a lot of them with Keenan Allen and Eckler. But Mike Williams now with the Jets. Your thoughts?
Ooh, boy, this is like putting your hand into a bag full of mouse traps.
Oh, my.
Um,
Sounds like fun.
you're hoping not to get snapped. It's the career of Mike Williams. It's like consistently has upside, consistently gets drafted. I don't want to say high, but like third, four, five round, and then he consistently just gets hurt over and over and over again. And I don't know how much of an upgrade it is going from the Chargers to the Jets. I mean, that's kind of a wait and see. But for me, it's a stay away.
Mike said he's not feeling Mike Williams in New York. I didn't put this on your guys' list, so I'm just going to talk about him. Hollywood, Marquise Brown, 1 year, $7 million to the Chiefs, has dealt with a myriad of injuries over the past 2 years, now with his third team in 6 years. He had a big 2021 with Baltimore, 91 receptions, 1,000 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Depending on how this offseason may go, he could find himself in a regular role with a quarterback starving for somewhat talented wide receivers. Rashee Rice showed some great things last year, but he had some off-season issues that could keep him off the field this season. Obviously, with some of that stuff takes a while to figure out, but I don't think he's even shown up anywhere because they're trying to figure out what's going on, but that's off the field stuff. We're not here to talk about that. He also, Brown, must beat out first-round pick Xavier Worthy. And, of course, Travis Kelce is still around. So how many balls could Marquise Brown go? He could end up being the third wide receiver or maybe number one. And if you're number one and you have Patrick Mahomes, there's a chance. I feel like his upside is a little bit bigger than Kadarius Toney. And as Mikey laughed at me last year when I mentioned that. So Marquise Brown, someone to keep on your radar. Who do we got next? Gabe Davis, now in Jacksonville. Todd, what do you think?
Yeah, not even on my radar. I mean, it's he couldn't. I mean, there was 1 week I was playing Dylan. He had Gabe Davis, and I think Dylan had an opportunity to beat me, and Gabe Davis got 0 points. Got 0 points. That is, yeah. Who knows? Maybe a warmer climate might help, but yeah, Gabe Davis isn't even on my. It's not even on my radar.
Not on his radar. All right.
No.
Mikey Deontay Johnson traded to Carolina from Pittsburgh. Reception hog in his time with the Steelers. How are we feeling about him?
Actually, a little bit better. Like, I don't know if something seemed broken with him last year. Like, it just wasn't. Maybe it was all the billions of different quarterbacks that the Steelers kept throwing out there. I think this is exactly what somebody like Bryce Young needed. He had a really bad season, and if he's going to develop, I think he needs somebody that can run a multitude of routes and kind of be, like you said, a reception hog. So, yeah, I mean,
What, Adam Thielen can't get that done? Still there,
Adam,
folks. Still
as
there.
you saw, Adam Thielen, for his age, did really well for the first half of the year, and then completely went, dead almost.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I think Deontay Johnson has a chance to have a pretty good year.
Todd, Jerry Jeudy, your boy, now in Cleveland. Is he on your radar?
I don't know. It's the radar might be broken.
Wow. So, like, of all the loyalty Todd's had through his career, he's lost his loyalty to Jerry Jeudy.
Well, here's the thing. First of all, good for Jerry Jeudy's agent who got him. Who got
kidding. That's the MVP of the season, right?
Yeah, there you go. That's who we should really be talking. That's who we should really be talking about is Jerry Jeudy's agent there. That got him all that money. But all right, just put it this way. We always talk about getting a second chance and trying to prove people wrong, and fantasy football is no different. Jerry Judy's not going to be the number one option in that offense. Like we were trying to do, like with the Broncos, we're obviously hoping he was going to turn into, but that didn't work. Maybe the pressure won't be there. The pressure won't be as much because he won't be dependent on to be the guy, because Amari Cooper and David Njoku, are the guys, and depending on who's quarterbacking, as the season goes on, depending on what happens to Sean Watson. But hey, if Jerry Jeudy, can maybe show those flashes that that we thought was gonna that everybody thought he was, he was when he first came in the league, prove me wrong. But I'm not going anywhere near Jerry Jeudy. I mean, he had so many opportunities. So first year I blamed it on Hackett because he didn't know what he was doing. Then we bring in Russell Wilson. Okay, finally got a quarterback to throw him the ball. Russell Wilson didn't work. Okay, if Deshaun Watson can't fix him, then he's broken. So let's move on, shall we?
It's everybody else's fault. It's not Jerry Judy's fault.
Well,
that's what I'm hearing right now. It's Nathaniel Hackett's fault and Russell Wilson's fault.
Yeah, that's part of it. But yeah, I know. And you guys remind
Russell
me.
Wilson was dropping the ball or alligator.
Yeah, I know.
Arming it and not running his routes to its fullest. Everybody else's fault but Judy's.
I know, and you're right. I agree with I agree with you, both of you. 100%.
Maybe the loyalty's still there. Loyalty's still there.
Yeah, well, I ain't drafting him. I'll tell you that right now.
All right, let's finish with these wide receivers. One guy I didn't have on the list, guys, was Curtis Samuel. We'll talk about him. He was now with Buffalo. Could be the number one guy now in terms of wide receivers. So we'll talk about him in the wide receiver. Darnell Mooney's now with Atlanta. Rondale Moore is now with Atlanta. Nelson Aguilar is in Baltimore. David Moore is in Carolina. Jalen Reagor's with the Patriots, and KJ Osborne with the Patriots. Here are the tight ends. I don't know if any of these are fantasy worthy. I'm going to reel these off, and you guys can just tell me if you want to talk about them. Gerald Everett, now with the Bears, 2 years, $12 million. Mike Gesicki with the Bengals, 1 year, $3.2 million. Chargers bringing Will Dissly and Hayden Hurst. Kobe Parkinson, 3 years, $22.5 million. I don't have the team. I'll have to look that up because I don't know and probably don't care. Zach Ertz, 1 year, $5 million. Any of these guys matter? Mikey?
I mean, Zach Ertz just keeps hanging on.
Yeah, doesn't he though?
He's like that dude. Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot there. I mean, Mike Gesicki's kind of interesting.
I feel like he's interesting every year, and he just doesn't do anything.
Well, he wasn't interesting to me in New England just because the quarterback situation is terrible. But, yeah, I mean, a little bit of interest there in Cincinnati, but not a lot.
I think Parkinson is with the Rams now. Okay, so that's the new guy. Anybody you want to talk about here? Any fantasy-worthy tight ends, Todd?
Well, you put him off the list, but Dalton Schultz?
Well, he re-signed with Houston. He's not in a new place. So we'll talk about him. That was my mistake. I think some of the guys I took out of later, but guys that got new contracts. And so Schultz was with Houston 1 year ago, with them again this year.
Yeah, well, Schultz is better than all the tight ends on the list here.
Agreed.
Yeah. Oh wow, that's got to be a first. We all agree.
Not a lot in terms of tight ends. Okay, so that's going to do it here. Old faces and new places. Todd, what's coming up on next week's show?
Oh, it's done. It's the Rookie Podcast, everybody. Oh, the best one of all. The best podcast, one we do all season long. Yeah.
Time to go to YouTube and check out all these new faces. Also, what we're going to talk about on next week's show, new rules. You may have seen an email. We just got this figured out today. We're going to talk about the smaller benches and fractional scoring. So a lot to talk about on next week's show. Guys, we're back in it. Another year of MHA. Another year of fantasy football, MHA podcast, MHA Fantasy Football League. I'm excited. You guys ready to roll for this year?
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Oh, man, I can't believe Todd won. We're going to have to listen to this all year until somebody knocks him off.
The champ is here.
Yeah, bring it on. Bring it on.
Well, that's going to do it for this week's episode, folks. We'll see you next week on that Rookies episode. Eric Lansing, Todd Diamond, Mikey Renault. MHA Podcast.